Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading of Death in Vain by Jane Suen, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Pits. Join me. Prologue. She lay there on the hard asphalt, her limbs splayed out on the rough surface of the aging two-lane highway. The long tresses of her thick dark hair were entangled with bits of dirt, decayed leaves, and pine needles. The heat of the day was long gone. The bright sunlight retreated as the darkness of the night emerged. An hour later, the moonlight, unobscured by clouds, cast shadows over this lonely stretch of rural road. The whisper of the wind in the trees made a soft rustling, joining with the harmonious chirping of crickets and other sounds of nature. A normal summer night, except for the woman on the road, her lifeless eyes open, seeing nothing. Chapter 1. It was near the end of summer. I packed light for my getaway before school started, essential toiletries and a few changes of clothing. I told no one except my mom. She understood why. The murder case and prospect had drained my energy and left me with barely any reserves. It turned out to be more than I had bargained for when I agreed to help my friend Bob. I couldn't say no to my friends. Not then and not ever, but it was impossible to see at the beginning how much effort it would take to uncover the dark secrets and expose the killers. It had sapped me, taking my strength and depleting my vigor. Both my body and soul needed to be recharged, and I had precious time left in the last carefree days of summer before the start of another hectic school year. I took charge of my welfare and escaped to go miles away by myself where I could relax in peace and quiet. No work, no distractions. I took my cell phone because I promised my mom she'd have a way to reach me. She asked me where I was going. I couldn't say. It was the truth. I didn't make plans and had no destination in mind. I got in my ratty old car and drove out of town, heading north to the highway. For the first 100 miles or so, I was still feeling high, soaring free of responsibilities and schedules. I had no commitments, no place where I had to be. I kept my foot on the pedal, sometimes a little too heavy, as I maneuvered the curves and climbs and descents, speeding ahead with the goal to put to put as many miles behind me as possible. The day was bright, and the sky was crisp blue, with the sun beating down mercilessly. I left my sunglasses behind at home, but nothing could dampen my spirits. Chapter 2. Another couple of hours later, my exuberance veered to boredom after endless stretches of asphalt and the drab sameness that repeated itself mile after mile. I took an exit and got off the highway, opting for a more scenic drive on country roads that meandered across rolling hills and patches of farmland with barns and fences, grazing cows and horses, and the occasional farm equipment in a field. I relaxed my grip on the wheel, smiling at the sight of three strong and healthy-looking horses in a fenced pasture chewing fresh grass and minding their own business. Soon I would be relaxing somewhere with not a worry in the world, just like them. My smile widened with this thought. In my rush to pack and get going, I had skipped breakfast. My stomach grumbled as a reminder. This far from the highway, fast food signs were non-existent. Nowhere to be seen were those usual food and fuel establishments clustered around cookie cutter exits. A quick glance around and in my rearview mirror showed no other vehicles in sight. I took a risk, pressing my foot on the pedal, accelerating as I pictured myself sitting down and enjoying a delicious home-cooked Southern meal. I craved good food cooked by a chef in the greasy kitchen of an establishment that didn't have yellow letters in its sign. A country restaurant owned and operated by locals for locals. I watched the needle climb on the speedometer. I was hangry. How fast could I go? A sign appeared ahead, Dave's Place. I caught sight of a small framed house about the same time and braked hard, yanking a sharp right turn directly into a crowded parking lot. I barely missed the vehicle ahead, which was parked facing the front door. My heartbeat raced as at the close call, seeing the sheriff conspicuously emblazoned on the side of the car. I guessed they were eating inside. The lot was packed. I was lucky to find a spot. The brisk wind whipped my loose hair as I parked and got out. I gripped the car door, bracing myself, turning my face up. The sky had darkened as the sun hid behind massive gray clouds. The rumble of distant thunder gave warning of impending rain. A quick summer storm that would break the spell of a sultry afternoon and drench the earth. I wasted no time in I wasted no time turning on my heels toward the restaurant. A blast of air conditioning greeted me as I stepped inside. The room was crowded and noisy and filled with loud laughter. Just my kind of greasy joint. The hostess came by to greet me after a brief wait. For one, she inclined her head and smiled. Yes, please. She picked up a menu and a set of utensils wrapped in a paper napkin and led the way, skirting between occupied tables and chairs pulled out in haphazard directions. I scanned the jam-packed room looking for a seat. Every table was occupied. The hostess made her way toward the only empty seat, the last stool at the end of the counter. How about there? To its left sat two uniformed officers, their backs to me. No doubt it was their cruiser in the parking lot. My heartbeat quickened with a rush of guilt about my speeding. I looked down at the stool, the seat painted bright red. Is this okay? The hostess asked, uncertain. Yes, it's fine, thank you. I was grateful she had found me a seat. I should be so lucky, right? She nodded and quickly placed the menu and utensils on the counter as I sat, and then she hurried away. This trip was to get away from crime and murder, and yet there they were, two law enforcement officers sitting right next to me. The waitress working behind the counter appeared, wiping some water rings away. Something to drink? She asked. I looked at her, a young girl, long hair tied back in a ponytail, tendrils escaping around her pretty face. It was devoid of makeup, except for a flush on her cheeks, which could have been because of the heat of the kitchen or the nature of her job. She wore a maroon t-shirt with the name of the diner, Dave's Place, printed on the front, and dark jeans. A short black apron with pockets crammed, an order pad sticking out of one, was tied over her t-shirt, encircling her trim waist. Coffee, I said without hesitation. Sugar and cream. Her voice was bright and chirpy despite the tired look in her eyes. Black, please. What are you having, hun? She weighed it with pen in hand, poised over her order pad. A typed slip of paper with today's special of burgers and fries was clipped to the frayed menu. Not finding any veggie burgers, I scanned the menu for a side order of vegetables. I'll take green beans, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes, and fried okra, please, I said, relying on familiar southern fare. Couldn't go wrong with that. Them's my favorites. The waitress drawled in a voice laced with a southern accent as she moved away to place my order. I didn't have to wait long for the coffee. She winked as she set my mug down before turning to the two officers with an almost full coffee carafe. Care for a fill-up, hun? I detected a slight familiarity in her voice and a gaze that was a fraction of a second longer on the younger of the two men, but maybe she called everyone hun. The older man spoke up. We'll take them to go, Caitlin. My eyes swung up to her name tag, partially hidden behind a wisp of her long tawny hair. She came back to them quickly with two large to-go cups. Y'all get any shut-eye last night? The older man shook his head and sighed as he picked up their tabs and headed toward the cashier by the front door. The younger man reached out to grab the coffees, his fingers grazing Caitlin's. Caitlin blushed as she cleared their dishes. She came back and wiped the counter again, glancing at me. You want a refill? Sure, thanks. No hurry, just when you have time. She came back with my food and filled my mug from a half-full pot of coffee. Thanks, Caitlin, I said, smiling. I'm Eve, by the way. I was curious about her exchange with the sheriff's deputies. I tipped my head toward their empty chairs. Long night, huh? She sighed. They've been at it for hours. At it? Yeah, they were called to the scene of a crime. What happened? The words popped out of my mouth before I could think. She leaned in, lowering her voice. A dead body. She shifted the pot to her other hand. The first we've had since I can remember. Were you born here? Yep, been here all my life. She looked young to me, about my age or younger. 19 years, she said, as if she had read my mind. What's the name of this town? I hadn't noticed a sign driving in. Thane, she said, quickly adding, but it's a flyspeck of a town. We don't even have our own police force. The county sheriff's office in Bearsville covers our area. You know what happened? Someone found a body on the road, called it into 911. I took a deep breath. What were the chances there'd be a body on my getaway? I was passing through, but despite myself, I couldn't help asking more questions. Do they know the identity of the person who died? Caitlin paused. Her eyes had a faraway look. Was it someone you knew? Kaylee, she said softly. Small place. Everyone knows everyone? Yeah, that's the way it is here. We went to school together, but not in the same class. She was a year younger than me. I'm sorry. I could see she was visibly moved and affected. She shook her head and licked her lips, apparently needing to talk, or perhaps she was an incurable gossip, even to a stranger. I probably shouldn't say this, but I've heard some things. Her eyes flicked to the empty stools next to me. The way she'd acted with the younger deputy, it was subtle, but there. Maybe it was partly shyness, although I thought there was a hint of familiarity. Perhaps he had let slip something when they talked, a detail about the dead girl. Perhaps he'd never seen a dead person in the line of duty, or perhaps it had been a gruesome, violent death and he couldn't deal with it yet, so he spoke out of turn. Caitlin picked up the rag and wiped the counter yet again, rubbing the same area over and over. We were all in a state of shock when we heard. She was the girl everyone thought would go far. Everybody thought she'd make it out of here, go places, do things, maybe become rich and famous. I'm sorry for your loss. I struggled to find the words. Did she have a family? Yeah, her mom and an older sis. No father? He left when she was a baby and her parents divorced. Do they know what happened? No, I don't know. Caitlin's slight frame sagged and her perky stance deflated as if the weight of it all sat on her shoulders. I pondered the information. Time was critical. The sheriff's department's working hard on this, right? She sighed. Yeah, they're trying. Don't know how long they can last without sleep. Caitlin, next order ready, a guy shouted from the kitchen. She sighed again and turned to go, her waitress smile back on. But it didn't quite reach her eyes.